Mow. Mow. Poke, poke. Mow. Boot. Booty, snoot, snoots. Snooty on the boots, boots. Mow. Hello. Tis I, Bulldog. Welcome to the experience, whatever this is. As per usual, my cup is full. My bowl is full. And I am full. I'm just full of happiness, of joy, of excitement. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this, whatever this is. Yeah. Lucifer's right in front of me. Hi, buddy. Kitty mush. And today, I have the most honored guest, Kelly Turnbull. She is well, it's an interesting conversation, let's put it that way. She's an animator, currently lives down in Los Angeles, we discuss a lot of things, and this is a lovely interview. So I guess on that note, I will hand it over to us. So, Bulldog, Kelly, take it away. All right. My next guest here is somebody, a fellow Canadian, now currently living in the City of Angels, working on many an animated show, Ben 10, as well as what's that one that Rick and Morty guys, Solar Opposites just came out, and also a comic book artist extraordinaire. You can find their comic, the one that actually brought me to the attention of them. It's manly guys doing manly things online, which is amazing, still amazing. Miss Kelly Turnbull, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderful. Thank you for being thank you for coming onto the Bulldog Experience, which is the name of my podcast.
Thanks for inviting me to come hang out and chat. Fun way to spend an afternoon. So I keep noticing birds flying behind the purple thing behind you. I don't know if those are like outdoor birds or if those are your birds.
Those are outdoor birds, but they're technically my birds because they put up stoop on my. And I know. Well, yeah, you collect pigeons as well.
Yeah.
I have seen the many pictures of your cool babies. What are you doing? I have a cat, just letting you know he'll probably make an
that's
appearance.
what I assumed is the Taily Po walking in front.
There he is. Yeah, Lucifer. He always comes by to say hi. So so yeah, speaking of Canada, so you were born in Manitoba, correct?
Yeah, Gillam, Manitoba. So like way up there, the part where they make the stereotypes. Also, I apologize for this guy doing power tool stuff outside. He just started.
It's fine. I had one of my guests had a siren, which he just kept talking through. So I was like, well, whatever. There's sirens in this episode.
Yeah.
So how long were you there and up north? Whereabouts?
I was born there, and I was raised there until I went to college. And then for the first couple of years I was in college, I went back and I worked for Hydro because it's a hydro town, so everyone works for Hydro. And so I do those you apply through the government and they give you a summer job, just like doing all the bitch work that the Hydro guys don't want to do.
It's kind of like me
crash on the freeway.
Well, it's kind of like me in Alberta. You grow up, you usually if you're not going to school, you go work in the oil patch. So
yeah. Oh, I mean I had friends who like at Sheridan who would go out to Alberta to like work on the oil rigs for the summers.
Yeah, you make good money though. Well, when it was booming. Now not
No,
so
I mean,
much. It's kind of died. Here,
that's
buddy.
it. Like, I don't know how much. I know that Hydra's been doing a lot of hiring freezes, so I don't know if they're still, taking care of their summer students. But like, when I was growing up doing that, that was a good way to make like 20 grand and like, work for 4 months. And I basically made it through college without any student loans because that was enough to pay my like rent and tuition for the year.
Same here. Well, I got my degree. You came to Toronto to do your schooling, right? Yeah.
So I went to Oakville, like it's Sheridan's the name of the school. And it's like, one of, I think like 3 colleges in the country that will give you like a Bachelor of Animation. I think it's like, like Emily Carr and Van Arts and like, Sheridan. There might be others now, but at the time that was pretty much what you had to offer. And then like Emily Carr was like the school you go to if you want to learn to do like NFB short, kind of Norman McLaren, sand on glass, like experimental animation. And I don't know what Van Art's situation is. Like, I don't think they had like a bachelor program for animation when I was like in college. I think it started like shortly after I graduated. But I know it was apparently like crazy expensive by Canadian tuition standards. So
you knew you knew right away that you wanted to do animation. Or like drawing, or was it?
Sorry,
like art was sort of art.
Yeah.
I need to get out of this town, so the better be able to pick up a pen and make things look good.
I did like my town. Like, I feel like a lot of people, would just complain about how it was small in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, I was okay with that, but I also kind of like knew my whole life, like, I'm going to grow up and leave this place. Like, I'm not going to stay here. And so like, I don't know if that's why I had like a higher tolerance level for it growing up, because it was like, oh, this is temporary. And other people were just kind of like, oh, I'll probably work for Hydro forever.
Yeah.
I was one of those people who like, I don't know, I had that specific kind of like ADHD brain where you like are like, you do really well in school. Like you kind of remember all the facts and just soak them all up and do well on all the tests and kind of like, get A's on everything without really trying. But like, I knew art was the only thing that I actually like could focus on well enough that like, I could make a career out of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great, and you certainly have quite the career. So after you got your degree and decided to leave the dumpling houses of Toronto behind, and
well, so I did work in Toronto for about a year. Like so when I got out of Sheridan, I spent like the first 4 months or whatever, like working in a diner and just I like had $13 in the bank at any given time, like trying to I had a while where I was living off of mini wheats and vitamin pills because that was all I could afford. Like that was the most like balanced, nutritious diet I could come up with. So after couldn't even put milk on the mini wheats. It was just like I would get like a mug of mini wheats and eat them like crackers.
Flintstone vitamins keep the balance.
Well, like I went for a while of just being totally unemployed and like no work at all. And then when I got my job as a diner waitress, I went out and I bought like $100 of booze with like the first, day of tips or whatever. Cause I was like, I haven't drunk any alcohol for 4 months and I just have to celebrate. And then when I got the job on Ugly Americans, I took my first paycheck and I went and I just bought I filled our whole fridge with like meat because I hadn't eaten meat in so long. And I started eating like just crazy kinds of meat. Like, there's I don't know if it's still there, but that like, I think it's called like White House Farms or something at St. Lawrence Market. It's the place that sells like the wild game meat, so you can buy like they sell like wild boar and and stuff. Yeah,
I'm sure it's still down there. Everything's down there, so yeah.
But yeah, I'd go there and I'd just buy weird animals I'd never eaten before. Like I was like eating camel and stuff because I was like, oh, this is a luxury to be able to eat meat again.
I was down in Australia and I never got a chance to kangaroo. I never or did I? I can't remember. I don't think I did. Unfortunately,
it's pretty good, but it can be kind of like touch and go because they release like a lot of adrenaline to their system when they get shot. So like I think they're only graded for human consumption if they put them down with like a headshot, and otherwise they use them to make hypoallergenic dog food.
And leather, what I'd assume.
Yeah. Oh, I mean they use any kangaroo regardless of its like meat status for leather. But yeah, I guess like because like adrenaline lowers the quality of meat, and that's kind of what gives like wild game that like gamey taste. Is like the more adrenaline that's in the system, the gamier the meat tastes. And so I guess like kangaroos get such a huge burst of adrenaline when they're like wounded, that the only way that you can like basically like make them for human consumption, so I've heard. I mean, I'm not an expert in hunting kangaroo,
Me
but
too.
I've been told that you got to put them down to the headshot to be able to grade it for human consumption.
Sometimes you just got to eat the pork. That's a callback to another thing in my.
Well, they actually banned kangaroo meat and leather and stuff in California.
Really?
Yeah, you can't.
Oh, you crazy Californians!
There's a guy at Wasteland who did a kangaroo chili every year. Now he has to make wild boar chili because they banned kangaroo.
Huh. Interesting. So worked a bit in Ontario. Then what made you decide that California is the place you ought to be?
Well, so I finished up the first season of Ugly Americans, and I mean I had a great time on that. Like I still think very fondly of that show. I've got like one of the big posters of like Twain from he was like the boss at like their the Department of Integration. And one of the writers on the show sent me one of the big bus posters that they had in like downtown New York, and I've got it like framed up in my hallway.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, so I had a bunch of friends who moved down to a company called 6 Point Harness after they graduated. Like they'd interned there, and then when everything shut down. Everything's in COVID terms now. Sorry. But yeah, when school was out, they moved to
graduate. After graduation.
No, my brain just defines chapters in my life by like, and that shut down. So school shut down, and then Ugly Americans shut down. And then, but yeah, when they got out of Sheridan, they moved down to Los Angeles to work at 6 Point. And so one of them, like one of their roommates, was heading back up to Canada right around the time that Ugly Americans was wrapping up. And they were like, "Oh, we have like space on our show, like we can put your." So like I don't even know if 6 Point like looked at my portfolio, or if they were just like, "Oh, like 4 of our top guys all think you're great, so we'll just hire you." But yeah, they brought me down, and so I worked on Good Vibes for MTV. I was an animator and a layout artist on that, and that I think that went on for it was originally supposed to be like a 16-week contract, so like I moved down to the States thinking it could possibly only be for 4 months. But they just liked me so much, they kept me around, and they kept rolling me onto like the next project and stuff like that. So I got to work on a ton of stuff through 6 Point, because they're they're kind of one of those like boutique studios that they get work contracted from bigger companies and stuff. So it's like they'll work for like Nickelodeon this week, and then Sony the next week, and then like Disney the next week. And so like they constantly have this stream of like projects in totally different styles. And
I was gonna say like that must be pretty nice to like, okay, now I gotta like, does that sort of switch in your brain to be like, okay, now I want to like, I gotta be Duck now, and now I gotta deal with that Ralph Brzezinski crazy roller scoping thing. Is that sort of like that must have been?
It's like a little back and forth, because like I feel like every job in animation is kind of like that. Like you'll wrap on Ben 10, and then you'll go to Solar Opposites, and like it's like you're always like, even if you're not working at the same studio, like you're always kind of like going on to shows that are very different from each other, unless you end up one of those like tenured Fox people who just kind of gets you're like on the Cleveland show, and then you're on American Dad, and then you're on Family Guy, and then you kind of like get in that kind of style groove, I guess. But with 6 Point, I feel like the thing that was the bigger whiplash was that you're going from like storyboarding to animating to doing layout to doing character design and stuff, and sometimes that's fun. Like sometimes it's I know that like when I started doing storyboards as like a regular thing, where it was like that was the majority of my time went to storyboarding, I was like, I like this so much more than animation, because like I kind of feel like with animation I was always sort of like a B team animator. Like it was I was like a good animator, but like I was good enough to get hired in LA, but like I was not ever going to be like an animation director or something like that. But with storyboards I was like, okay, I'm good at storyboards. Like I felt like if I did a really like exciting piece of animation, a lot of the time it was by accident, and it was kind of like I couldn't replicate that success. It was kind of like I just like moved things around a little bit until it started working. But with storyboards, when I did a good storyboard, I could tell you like exactly why it's a good storyboard. Like every single thing was deliberate and intended, and so I was like, oh, I have control over this in a way that I don't with an animation. And I think to some degree animation kind of feels like, what kind of brainworms do you have? Like, what part of the process do you like to micromanage? Because if you're the kind of person who's like, I like to kind of be in charge of like all of the acting through the whole episode, it's like I just want to do a whole bunch of like shitty drawings, but like make everybody kind of like follow my direction on that. Then it's like, oh, you're a good board artist. But if if you're like, I just want to draw like the most beautiful 12 seconds, I want to make 12 seconds of this
Of
like
explosion.
sing and be amazing.
Yeah, this explosion looked amazing. Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, you're a great like animator, because it's like I I don't know. It's like there were these people I knew who like they had a bunch of roommates living in one house together, and half of them were storyboard artists and half of them were background painters. And they were saying that the storyboard artist could not spend more than 10 minutes on a single piece, and the background artist could not spend like less than 10 hours on a single piece. And it's like, yeah, it's just, kind of like what your attention span for a thing is. It's like, I kind of feel like, for me personally, when I'm drawing things, like once I've gotten the point out, then I'm kind of bored of it. It's like, okay, you get the idea, you get the joke, like you've seen it. I don't need to spend too much time gilding the lily. But I just have like very little patience for rendering. It's like, I know that if I put the time into painting, I could get good at painting, but I just have no interest in, it's like, I always look at painting like the time I would spend painting a background, I could draw like, 3 pages of comic or something like that. And I could tell so much story. And that's just, me. It's like the animation process depends on people who like to fixate on all of those different little pieces. Like, it's like you need the people who only want to spend 10 minutes on one drawing, and you need the people who want to spend 10 hours on a drawing, and you put them together and you get like a finished cartoon. And it's that's the fun part of the process. This is kind of like everybody playing to their strengths and making something special out of it.
And that's I personally, my previous guest was John Stalker, the voice of Mr. Beastly from Care Bears, and
that's cool.
Teddy Ruxpin and that. And we were talking about, and it's kind of nice that this sort of flows into the aspect of it, because I like doing the voice work stuff and all that, but it's also like there's so much stuff that goes into animation, like you said, the boarding, the animators, coloring, camera work, voice, script work. Oh my god, it goes on and on and on. Have you delved into any other aspects of it, or do you like what so you'd say that your sort of thing is that your storyboard is your favorite part of it, or like what would you say? Okay, let's say from top 5, like 5 descending order, what things that you like doing in shows.
I like storyboarding, I like writing, I like animating, I like character design. I don't know, like some shows have a process they call layout, where it's like you're basically taking storyboard panels and you're cleaning them up like very on model and stuff like that. And like that's fun too. It's sometimes it can feel like there's kind of a grass is greener on the other side situation, because like I know when I was working on Ugly Americans, like I was on every phase of the process in that. Like I came on for character designs, then I did storyboards, and then I did animation layout, and then I did animation, and then I did in-betweens, and then they kept me around after the show wrapped up to make character reference libraries for like, the next season. So I touched every single part of the process, and like every phase of the way, it was like, when I was boarding, I was like, oh, I might be doing boards, but it's the layout artists who have like the real power to like, direct how the scene's going to look. And then when I was doing layout, I was like, oh, like I might be doing layout, but it's the animators who have the real power to direct how the scene looks. Then when I was doing animation, it's like, oh, well, it's the board artists who have the real power to direct how the scene's going to look. So it's like, every single piece is important. And, sometimes when you're like in it, it feels like, maybe your part of the pie doesn't matter as much as someone else's.
Oh, no, somebody else is good.
The whole thing together.
That's just say I used to build houses, and like I built houses from like board, dig the whole foundation, all the setup, pour the cement, everything else. But our joke was like, don't worry, the framers will cover that up. Don't worry, the drywallers are going to cover that up. Don't worry, the painters will cover that up. Don't worry, the finishes will. And it was all us. right through me. My boss used
Mhm.
to joke about that, so I get it. I get that. It's kind of that. Ha! It's me. It's just me.
What so like Ugly Americans was split into two half seasons. So we did 7 episodes and then Comedy Central ran them and then they saw how they kind of like tested with the audience. They decided if they wanted 7 more. So we like I was brought on originally as an in-betweener because that was my first job out of college. Like, I went and I did the test where they had you go down to a cup of coffee like in person and sit at a desk and they just had you do as much animation as you could for 2 hours. And I'd never encountered like that flash pipeline before where they have the layout drawings and then you're basically going in and kind of like saucing them up and adding like the breakdowns and the antics and stuff like that. But so they were like, okay, just do the keyframe animation, don't worry about in-betweens. And looking at it I was like, but this already looks keyframe animated, like what are these poses? And so I didn't really know what to do. And I'd never used Flash before, and so I learned to use Flash in the process of like doing this test. And I mean, I tried to research the night before like how does Flash work, but there's some things you can't learn until you put your hands in it. And so it's like, yeah, okay, I'm trying to remember like what do all these buttons do? And then I didn't realize how much Flash crashes, so it crashed after an hour and like halfway through this 2-hour test, and I lost everything I'd done. And I was like, okay, well, let's just redo it better with everything I learned in the first hour. So
and then you can
everybody
tighten
left
it up. Yeah. But that would suck.
yeah. But it was enough to get on the show. Like, so after I did the test, like I mean, I love the show. And when it came in and they kind of gave us the run through of like, this is what it looks like and this is what it's going to be about. And, I was like, I recognized that it was August. That was when they were still making Super Jail, and it was kind of like, oh, I recognize like Aaron Augenblick style, and that like impressed them. They were excited that I knew the studio they were going to be working with.
I love Super Jail.
So I wrote them a letter afterwards.
Oh, I was just saying, it's so good. Like all of it is just beautiful. It's like a mind trip for the eyes. It's just wonderful.
I feel like Super Jail was basically how they proved that you can do traditional animation on a TV series budget, like basically on a Flash budget, like you can do like traditional in Flash. And I know that that's kind of like Titmouse got really well known and good at doing traditional and Flash animation, but like I really feel like Super Jail and Augenblick kind of like pioneered that area. And that was why Ugly Americans got brought to them, because they were doing the same kind of like, it's going to be Flash animation, but we're going to do it all traditional, like every single frame hand drawn. And so they kind of like had that pipeline down. But yes, like after I did the test, everybody kind of left the test not really knowing if they'd done a good job, because we didn't really like know what they were asking for. And I just wrote them a letter that was like, thank you so much for the opportunity. Like the show looks great. I'm really, I'm really excited about it. And even if the animation test I did isn't up to snuff, like if there's anything, it's like if you want me doing photocopies, like I would love to be involved in this in like any way I could.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they ended up giving me an in-between job. So I didn't get like a keyframe animator, which, when you're fresh out of college, a keyframe job is fine. But when they called me in, they were saying like, yeah, it came down to like you and 3 other guys who scored kind of like the same on the tests. And they're like, you just wanted it more. Like they were just impressed with me being sparkling and sending them a nice follow-up letter and just, how genuinely excited I was about the show. And, that was what got me, that was my foot in the door. And then from there, like from the end of Ugly Americans, basically from getting into Ugly Americans, I didn't stop working for 10 solid years before I had like, 3 months of unemployment while I was like, looking for something after Ben 10.
Yeah, Ben 10. But that's great that, you had such a wonderful stretch to not have to worry about stuff. And and like, just goes to show your talent and all that. And like, again, if those listeners or viewers watching this, if you haven't checked out Manly Guys Doing Manly Things, it is a journey. It is a journey for sure.
I hope so. I every so often I'll like see comic book pop up and I'm like, this is very like 2010s kind of humor, but there are a lot of things I learned through the process of making it. And I don't think there's anything in it that I'm just like, like, oh, that's a mean spirited, because like I've always tried to like just not be mean spirited. I think there are some things that I would talk about in it that it's like, oh, we have different language for talking about those issues now, or like we've kind of like it's like sort of, some of them are just sort of like, this is where we were talking about that situation in like 2011, and we've progressed beyond that. And so,
but it's still really entertaining. And you're right, and like you write men so well, like the whole thing. No, it's just interesting to see like the take. And like I remember reading it, getting like right into it right off the hop, and I was like, man. And then I reached out to you and we started talking and all that. It's such an interesting. I found it like nothing was ever mean spirited in what you were doing, and it came from an honest place, and it just that you had such a vastness of things that you could pool draw from, that made things more and more interesting, right? So you don't have to be a brute force like your Pokemon trainer fellow there with Fish, Mr. Fish, right? That's that sort of thing, right?
It's funny because that was originally like going to be, before I started Manly Guys, that was an idea I had for a totally different webcomic. It was just going to be like a comic about the worst Pokemon trainer ever, and it was going to be like his adventures like bumbling through Kanto. And so I wrote the whole thing where it's like he gets the fish and then he's going around like hitting other Pokemon with it, and then it turns into a Gyarados. And then I was like, all right, that's all the ideas I had. Like, but
it also like it like the commander there sitting goes like, like you have a giant dragon with you, and I mean that's pretty cool. Like, all right, cool, you could be an intern here. Yeah, check this website out. It is amazing, man. I'll post it in the links descriptions down below, just because it's so wonderful.
I mean, I do think, it's like a lot of the inspiration kind of behind it was, like I'm obviously like a masculine kind of person. It's like I lift weights and I ride motorcycles and I have like a square jaw. And I like, when my hair is properly coiffed, I look like the captain of the football team kind of. So like, I've always been like, that kind of like, it's like, I don't know, you were like, before we started this, you were asking like, oh, what are your pronouns? And I was saying like, I would just say like dealer's choice, because, there are definite, it's like, I don't know, I feel like the pronouns that someone gives me says kind of more about them than it does about me. And it's like, I don't care one way or another. Like, it's like, that's, to me, I feel like when I see how someone is addressing me, it like kind of lets me know how I'm going to go into the conversation. And, like I've had times like, oh God, I was like on the streets of LA and this guy was like trying to fight me. And then I realized that he thought I was a man. And then when he he was like, oh, now that I see your bitch, she's fine. And I was like, well, I mean, that's weird to say, but I'm glad you don't want to fight me anymore. It's weird, it's
that
like,
moment of like,
yeah, he just saw like, a like big person with a, like leather jacket and broad shoulders, and just assumed, it's like, oh, we're gonna start some shit or whatever. But like, so I feel like in my late teens, kind of early 20s, there was that phase I went through where it's like, kind of like, okay, I'm not accepted by women. It's like, I remember like, being at, it was like, I was at work and one of the guys that I hung out with, like, got a new girlfriend. And one of the other, like, someone else in the group was like, oh, finally, there's like, I have a girl to hang out with. And it's like, I mean, I'm right, that kind of thing where it was like, women were kind of like, you are not one of us. And so that was, it's like, all right, I've been like excluded from your group for not performing femininity in the way that you would like me to. And then, so, I'd start hanging out with guys, and it's kind of like, okay, we're, it's like we're busting each other's balls. It's just kind of like that sense of humor and stuff. But I realized after a while that, it's like the same way that guys sort of talk about how like, I mean, it's like that kind of like alpha male shit that people buy into, where it's like, it's like you sort of like have this man hierarchy, and the other guys on it, it's like, if you say something that upsets them, they can like sort of take, your authority away from you or whatever. That was the same kind of thing I felt, where it was like, they were accepting me more than the women in my life were, but it was a very conditional kind of like, we accept you as long as you're not, not one of the girls, like not, it's like, if you're like, hey,
so long as you're in this tribe, you're okay.
Yeah, it's like,
just don't go over to that tribe. We'll be fine.
It's like, it's those things like, if you're like, hey, it's not cool to joke about raping people, And then it's kind of like, oh, that's totally what like a, some bitch would say and stuff. And so it's like, oh, and like, I think, there was a brief period where I was kind of like, oh no, you've like assaulted my man points with, this attack. And then, but then I realized like, if we're all worried about like, oh, what's, manly and cool and confident and stuff like that, it's like, there is no like, little, like, I don't know. It's like, there's nothing that's more of like just a weak move than sort of like letting your self-esteem depend on other people like that. It's kind of like, oh, if I am secure with myself, then there's nothing you can say to me to like take that power away from me.
Absolutely.
And so I think that was kind of like where manly guys came from, was that like, oh, it was like, what if we're talking, because like obviously I'm entrenched in this like macho dude culture, but it was like, okay, but what if it's like just people learning that like, you just learning to be themselves and, kind of like not falling for those traps and
learning how to be Kratos and
but like
selling something, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that because I mean, not I'm trying to like toot my own horn here, but I've had a lot of people say like, like you write men really well, or they're saying like, I'm surprised that you're not a man, or things like that, and it's like, I think that I just have that insight from going through that situation of like, yes, I understand what it's like to feel like you have to, kind of like perform masculinity and like, sort of like not show weakness or not kind of like show cracks in the armor so that other people are going to like dig at and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I definitely like relate to that experience and, put that into the writing.
Well, like I said, it's amazing. And yeah, like it's within your writing, it's awesome. And like, again, your drawings are beautiful too. So, but getting back onto the course of Ben 10 and all that, yours wasn't the original Ben 10. You did the
no,
the
we were
remake, right?
we're the reboot. Actually, so the reboot is now the longest running iteration of Ben 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's more just total. I mean, like there's more episodes anyway, because the old Ben 10 was like 22 minutes and ours is 11 minutes. So like every episode is like 2 episodes. But if you just count like gross runtime, like total minutes of the series, the new Ben 10 is like, I think it's like a season longer than the old Ben 10 or something, or like the long. I forget what the longest of it was, like Omniverse or something. I'm like 2 years removed from Ben 10, so I forget the names of all of them.
Well, I remember you were saying that in one of your tweets just recently that people are now like, how dare you reboot this? To that people are being like, man, that's such a great show, right? It's just
part of it was like the original when it came out. It's for 6 to 10-year-olds or 6 to 11-year-olds, and so when you're putting it online, all the people who were 11 years old, back in like 2000, what was it, 2010, I think, when the original Ben 10 it came out, like so. Right when I was kind of going to college. But like so the people who were 10 years old then are now like in their 20s, and this is like a cherished part of their childhood. They have memories of like, like this is the way it's supposed to be, like this is the way I remember it being. And so when you show them something new that's in a very different direction, that is made for like, it's wiping the slate for like a new group of kids, and it's like, like they feel like that's not my thing. Like they're excited that it's understandable. They're excited that new things coming out, and then it's not what they expected it to be, and it disappoints them.
Well, and we'll keep going.
But so in the meantime, like so the 6-year-olds we're making the show for, they don't have any kind of social media presence. So if you see like what are people saying about Ben 10 on the internet, it's all these like 25-year-olds who are like, like this isn't what I want it to be, and all the 6-year-olds who enjoy the show are just being 6 years old and not playing on Tumblr, because no 6-year-old should be on Tumblr. But now that we're I guess like, so the reboot came out in 2016, so we're like 5 years removed from that. So the kids who were like 11 years old when the reboot started, who weren't on social media, are now 16 years old and are on social media, and that Ben 10 is a cherished part of their childhood. So like, now I see more people talking about it and talking about how much they like it and stuff, where they didn't before because they were just too young to be on the internet.
So yeah, persistence pays off. Speaking of reboots, have you seen He-Man just dropped
Oh, I actually just finished watching it.
Did you? I haven't
Yeah.
seen it, so please don't.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, and I've heard a lot of mixed
Yeah, it's
result or
it's
mixed things. Is it like how do you like? I grew up. I'm that kid who's sitting here, Kevin Smith. How dare you ruin my childhood? Possibly. I haven't seen it myself. I can't say whether yay or nay. But I saw the preview for it, and like my eyes got wet because I was sitting there thinking about I had that toy, you know, like in nostalgia eyes. So I haven't. Again, that's probably what I'll do after after this is all said and done. What did you think of it? What's your opinion on it? Was it?
It's not what I expected it to be. Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the trailer that everybody got hyped for is more of a trailer for the first episode than it is a trailer for the series. There's I think there's like kind of like, it looks beautiful. Like, the art is beautiful, the animation is beautiful, like the backgrounds, it's like, Powerhouse does gorgeous work. I think like writing wise, it kind of had the same thing that I felt like when I watched Castlevania, where it was like, like things are happening, but like sometimes they just don't feel like interesting things, where it was like, I know that we're progressing in the story. I know that like, I can't look at it and say like, this is what I would trim out, but it's like a lot of things that were happening. I was like, I don't know. I'm not excited about that thing happening. I
get you.
Yeah. I was telling like a friend, like when I watch Thor movies, like there's sometimes like Thor movies make me feel like there's an exciting story happening somewhere, but it's not what
here
I'm watching. Yeah. And I think that Castlevania really made me feel like that. Like, Castlevania felt like there was an exciting story, but, we were spending 3 episodes looking at, Simon and Alucard like hanging out in the library instead of like doing something interesting. And He-Man definitely like had more going on. Like there's more like constant progress, like moving towards their goal, but there's just something about it that I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, the first episode's super hype and the last episode's super hype. And then, it felt like maybe it could have been like an 1.5 hour long movie instead of like a 5-episode series.
Yeah.
But
I find that does happen a lot, really. There's the bloated episode. Like the thing is, I understand it's television. I myself, I prefer, I love movies because it's, everything has to have that click thing. Otherwise you're just, people get bored and start checking their cell phones, right? But I mean, like, it allows you to keeps the thing going with the animation. Animation, comic books. What do you think about I know that you're trying to get into Lobo.
Yeah, I've made a few attempts to pitch something to DC. I don't know. It's like I mean, I don't know how much going into it would, damage me. And,
have you rode in on your bike and kicked the door in and just walked up to him with your drawings and been like, look, look.
I mean, the first time I pitched a Lobo thing to, I did. So, I mean, it was a great meeting that I had with like, I forget the name of the editor that I met with, but, I did show up on a motorcycle and, like when we were like, we had a great lunch, like I had a great time talking to him. We were parting ways. And he was just like, he's like, you're just so cool. And it's like, yeah, that's what I like to hear. But from what I hear, it sounds like that pitch was kind of a casualty of like, Eddie Berganza was in charge of Lobo at the time, and they were like trying not to put women in contact with Eddie Berganza. And then, like I've made a few attempts at pitching things and just, like there was a lot of like, I was waiting for my green card to process for a long time. So there was like a point where, they were like, oh, we're interested in kind of what you're bringing to us, but we can't hire you right now because you're stuck in green card purgatory. And like, I couldn't take any other jobs. Like basically it's like, I had my visa that I was like grandfathered into the green card wait with, and then I couldn't get another visa to work for another company like while I was waiting for that to clear. And because that all happened during the government shutdown and the Trump administration and all that, like the waiting times for like so usually when you apply for a green card, you get like a couple months into the process, you get a work permit and a travel permit, and that basically lets you live in the country as though you have a green card while you wait for the green card to finish processing. So you're allowed to like leave the country and you're allowed to work for whatever job you want. But because everything was so backed up when I applied, the wait times for that went up to 6 months. And so I actually ended up getting the green card, like the full green card, before I got the travel permit and the work permit that were supposed to let me,
Oh
like,
my God.
work as though I had a green card while I
I
was waiting for
remember
it.
I remember talking to you about that when I was down
Mhm.
there. That was sort of the big
Yeah.
issue. Uh,
But I mean, I got the green card September last year, or 2 years ago, I guess. Last year was I got it right before everything shut down. Basically, it was like I got the green card, and then like, you know,
because
half
you're
a year
married
later.
to your husband's
Yeah, like my husband's from Riverside, so he's SoCal boy, born and raised.
yeah, so but I mean like you well, I mean, I guess not even really, because like marriage of like you're crossing over, right? To the
Say what?
oh sorry, where is he born?
Oh, he was born in Riverside. Like it's just outside Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean,
Yeah,
like, he's your husband, you're married, you're down there working. Like,
yeah.
they couldn't be like, fuck off, Canuck, up to Canada,
You
right?
you actually don't just automatically get a green card for getting married. You still have to go through the whole application
Well,
process and stuff
of
like that.
course,
Yeah.
but
But
they wouldn't
yeah,
have been like.
well, so I was there on a work visa, and that's how I was living in the country for like the 10 years before I got the green card.
Mhm.
And so then when I put the application in for the green card, it's like as long as I had that visa, I could still work on the visa. But if I, say like if I left that job, or like it actually, like I ended up getting the green card about 2 weeks before Ben 10 ended. And so if I hadn't gotten the green card, then when Ben 10 ended, I wouldn't have been able to look for other work. Like I would have just had to like be unemployed living in the country, like, not making any money, waiting for the green card to come in.
Oh, that would have sucked.
Yeah. But yeah, it came in just in time. So things worked out. And then, I mean, I remember when I applied for it when the government was shut down, and it was like, oh, this is like the worst possible time I could have like put in this application. And then a year later, society shut down. And I was like, oh, never mind. It wasn't the worst time.
It was something, huh? That was how did you fare through that? Was that like you get obviously kept your head above water though? Like,
Yeah,
did
it's
you
pretty
do
well. Like,
work from home? I guess it's
mhm.
animation now. I guess it's
Yeah,
easier to
so I
do.
was working on Solar Opposites like when the shutdown happened. So that was where we all kind of transitioned to work from home. And it was like very simple. Like, yeah, I mean, I think so many, animation people are used to kind of like freelancing and working at home anyway. It was just a
Mhm.
matter of kind of like getting the servers and stuff set up for everyone to work on. So like there was like maybe a day of just kind of like everybody figuring things out. But then, by the next week we were like totally like, it's like, okay, we're back in the gear.
Yeah.
And then, so I went from Solar to Lower Decks because it's the same like showrunner. It's like Mike McMahon. And so it has a bunch of the same directors and stuff. And they were like, hey, we loved working with you on Solar. We want to bring you over to Lower Decks. And so I worked on a couple episodes of that. And then I got they were starting the Big Mouth spinoff, HR. It hasn't aired yet. I don't know when it's going to start airing, but I really like it. Like
Are you're allowed to talk about this, or am I going to have to?
I'm allowed to say that much because they premiered it, like they announced it at Annecy like a month
Okay.
or so ago.
Because I had a previous guest. I'm not going to say who or say what, but he messaged me. He's like, I sent him the thing, and he's like, oh, that one part about that one thing. Could you like? Like, oh, okay, yeah, done.
They announced that it was happening in 2019. Like they announced that the series was greenlit. And then they announced like a couple months ago at Annecy that just kind of like it's on its way. It's in production, and they unveiled like a few of the voice actors. Like they announced that like A.D. Bryant's on it, and Randall Park, and so Randall Park got to go say like a little bit about it and stuff.
Okay, so you're not going to
Yeah,
be up the creek here. All right.
yeah. That much at least I'm allowed to say.
All right. All right. I just wanted to
But,
be sure. Just wanted to double
but yeah,
check.
so they were staffing up for directors on that, and the director that I'm working with on it right now, like he was one of the directors on Ben 10, and they were like, oh, you need an assistant director, who do you want? He was like, oh, get me Kelly. And so they went and kind of brokered that trade from Lower Decks, because it's like another Titmouth show, so the producers kind of like worked that out between them. And I got to so I ended up leaving Lower Decks an episode early to go like work as an AD on HR. And then when HR wrapped up, they just rolled the whole crew onto Big Mouth. So been working on that since then.
Oh,
And then
that's
somewhere
great.
in the middle of that all, I worked on the Lackadaisy short. Like I did boards for that. So that's, I mean, I'm super excited to see how that's coming together. It's Fable Siegel's the director on it, and it's Tracy J. Butler's comic Lackadaisy Cats. And
Okay.
they raised like 330,000 or something to like make this like animated pilot, and
Brilliant.
it's
I haven't
fantastic.
I don't know that from Adam, but yeah, I'll probably check it out afterwards.
It's definitely one of like the classic kind of like it's like from that golden age of webcomics, kind of like in the early like 2010s and stuff on like it's that comic about like it's like prohibition rum runners, but they're all cats.
Oh, I haven't heard about this.
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely gonna have to
it's
check
great.
it out now.
Yeah, it was nominated for an Eisner. It's
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The one that I'm currently infatuated with is Lore Olympus on for like web comics. Have you heard about that? Oh my Jesus. I paid like $20 so I could buy like up to the like I am a huge fan of that one, man. Oh, it is glorious.
I haven't read too much of it, but like the art's beautiful. Like
the art, and then you get into the story, and it's nice. Like, and you're like, damn it, my Saturdays is like, 9 o'clock, hurry up, you son of a bitch. Like nice. one of my true favorite web comics that's been going on. Well, that's great. But you're Solar Opposites. I love that show. The wall.
I was so excited.
The wall people. Man. At first it's just kind of like, but then the B plot became the A plot, and you're just like, holy shit, that's just
no. I was so excited when they shuffled the teams around. So like they did like a little bit of restructuring. Like I think when they started season 2, they kind of realized that like they had a team that was mostly new people, and they had a team that was like all people with like over 10 years of experience on them. So they shuffled it around a bit just so it was kind of like more of an even mix of experience between the teams. And so I got moved to the team that was doing the big wall episode for season 2, and they gave me the scene where I mean, I don't want to spoil this for people who haven't seen it, but they gave me the Pez dispenser scene, and they gave me the possum scene, like the big, the very scene. And I was just like, oh, this, I felt like, I was like, I've never felt so just, I don't know.
And those ones are amazing. Those were,
trust me.
Those were so powerful. I didn't know spoilers, but my God, yes. I sat there. I was like I binge watched the whole series, but that part I was like, and then like the worst part I find is that it came to an end. Like that's what I mean. Like the main course there just was so juicy. It was just you sank your teeth in, and I was into that. Like just, and it was such a like thank you for your craft and your art, and like how well you do with this. It's you're definitely giving such a wonderful, awesome thing to the universe, and I mean that. Like it really is.
It was really nice getting into like I feel like kids TV can sometimes be such a marathon. It's so much about like just trying to like like get it out the door. It's like you have a 5-week schedule, and if you're on a board driven show, you're also like writing the script for it. So it's like they kind of give you like an outline of the general idea of what they'd like to see happen, and you're designing the characters, and you're designing the locations, and you're writing the episode, and it's like so much extra work to do, and it's like in a 5-week schedule, and so it just feels like it wears you out really fast. And so when I left Ben 10, I was just burnt out. And I was like, I don't know how I can go to another show. Like I just feel like cartoons don't live in me anymore. And then when I got on Solar, I got there and I found out like the primetime pipeline is very different, and it's more like the schedules were kind of more in like it's like more of like a 7-week kind of range. It's sort of like it depends a bit, because they'll kind of like move people between episodes, and sometimes they'll have like revisionists finish off an episode while they move the board artist on to the next one. And there's just so many, like there's such a luxury of time to kind of like revise things and go in, and it sort of felt like working in kid shows. It was kind of like if they do revisions on your stuff, it was like, oh, you're wrong, like you did a bad job and it needs to be fixed. But like on these primetime shows, it was like a way more positive kind of like environment of just like like it's a rough draft. The more times you go over a rough draft, the better you can make it look.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, you'll look at it, and then your director will look at it, and then the supervising director will look at it, and everybody just is kind of like, oh, but what if we just change this a bit, and what if we just change that a bit, and then by the end of it,
and then this is great. Oh, but then can we just do this? And
I mean, there's so much of that, because like they'll put the whole animatic together, and then like the EPs will look at it, and they'll be like, oh, but maybe we could add just like a little bit more, and then like they'll get the animation back from overseas, and they'll be like, oh, but maybe if we just add a little bit more. And so like the final version you're getting, like it's been revised so many times, and so many people have touched it, but like it's the best version of it that it could be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, like Final Space, did you do something on that?
No, I didn't work on that, but I know people who are on it.
That's another one of my personal favorite ones. Is I remember watching the pilot that was on YouTube. So I've been a Final Space fan from the very when it was released on YouTube, which I love the medium of this. This is going to be on YouTube as well, just to like say, hey, animators, like these shows, like animation on YouTube is just such a beautiful and wonderful thing. And like, again, that Infinity Train got picked up, I think, or was that on
I'm pretty sure he was like Owen Dennis was, or whatever his name. I think his name's Owen Dennis. The guy who made Infinity Train. I'm pretty sure he was like a Cartoon Network guy, and the Cartoon Network, because he was I think he was on regular show and Close Enough maybe before Infinity Train.
I remember seeing the short on YouTube. That's why I'm like, was that off of one of those like mini shows that they did?
Yeah, it was in the Cartoon Network Shorts program. So Cartoon Network, like, kind of for, I don't know if it's still the case what they're doing, but like a lot of the time, instead of doing like a pilot episode, they'll do shorts. So it's like you pitch a short and they'll make like a 7-minute short kind of, and then they'll play that and see kind of like how the world responds to it, and then they'll develop shows like from those shorts. So like, Steven Universe was a short before it was a series, and that was like, that one had a lot of controversy because they totally redesigned the characters. Like that was Pearl like didn't have any kind of nose all in the.
My buddy keeps telling me to watch it, and I watched like the first or second episode. I get to like 2 or 3 in, and I'm just like, I don't like. I love the She-Ra reboot that happened, which is wonderful. It's interesting, like coming from that age of young, being an 80s kid. Like I've seen Biker Mice from Mars to like, again, He-Man, the Smurfs, and like but then you start seeing things being rebooted, and you're like, but then I always enjoy the stuff that had the potential to be great, be taken to that next level. Right. That's sort of the thing. Like I like Powerpuff Girls, I don't feel deserved a reboot. Like I felt that the stuff that they had was strong enough, right? And
I think, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm just saying you bleed out the magic, and then it kind of like becomes mush. Corporate mush. But you were saying, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the things that seem to lead to a reboot happening, like, one of them is, like if there's a property that's like a toy property that like, it always sells toys, like you have to refresh a toy property like every 6 years or so. So that's why there's like always a new Ninja Turtles coming out.
Voltron.
Because they say like,
Voltron.
Oh yeah.
Voltron.
Voltron, like, I mean, Ninja Turtles is the big one because there's always something Ninja Turtles in production, but like, Batman, Spider-Man, they're kind of similar things. And it's like, so the biggest I mean, I'm fascinated by the metrics of just marketing toys, because like I worked in toys for so long. Like I worked on Monster High, I worked on Barbie, I worked on like Ben 10. It was just like, so much toy stuff.
Selling toys.
There were some like things that I worked on that were like behind the scenes development stuff that didn't go anywhere. Like I worked on like 3 different aborted He-Man attempts that, they kind of like started it, and then they were like, actually we don't like how this is going. Or like, like we're just, it's kind of like they decided to change direction after we did like a bunch of concept art or, whatever.
Yeah.
But so like I worked in toy stuff for like a long time. And so the biggest market for action figures is 4 to 6 year olds. And the shows are being made for kind of like, so there's there's like 6 to 11 shows, and then there's like 9 to 14 shows. And 9 to 14 shows are the ones for kind of like teenagers that are kind of like Rocko's Modern Life and like Invader Zim and stuff like that. Like those are 9 to 14 shows where it's like, you know, it's like a little bit edgier. And then the 6 to 11 shows are the shows that are kind of like the post preschool, like, you know, when you see a toy that's like for ages 3 and up, it's like, that's kind of like who, you know, the 6 to 11 stuff is for. And so that's on the development side, that's different from like, you know, the rating, because like all these shows get like a Y7 rating. And that's part of the reason why like you can look at 2 Y7 shows and they have completely different senses of humor. Like, you know, there's stuff that they got away with in Gravity Falls that we could like never get away with in Ben 10, but that's because like Gravity Falls is kind of more of a 9 to 14 show and Ben 10 is more of a 6 to 11 show. But
both are
so,
great.
You know,
I mean, both are great.
Yeah. Oh,
for
absolutely.
reasons,
like,
right?
You know,
That's just it.
Like I'm a firm believer that every single kid deserves to have cartoons for them. So it's like, you know, you make a whole bunch of cartoons.
And I'd like to say
something for everyone.
Hold on, I would like to say that Gravity Falls is for all ages. It was
I just mean like that's
like, wow.
When they're like putting it together, they're like, that's, you know, the 9 to 14.
This is our target, but let's make it for everyone.
Yeah. It means that, you know, like they're making it kind of for everyone, but they're not going to use language that you can't say in front of 9-year-olds.
True. It's not Duckman, so
yeah. But so like, I'm trying to get my train of thought here. So yeah, like the thing with action figures is like, you know, when you have like kids are so sensitive to things looking dated. If they see things that existed before they were alive, then they really hone into their like, you know, like, oh, that's an old people thing. And so there are a lot of things where it's like we see a toy brand, like, you know, if we see like Monster High and then 6 years later they reboot Monster High and make the toys look different, then we're like, oh, why was that necessary? They looked great before. But to little kids, they're like, oh, 6 years, like that's my babysitter's toy. That's not my toy.
The perception of it changes. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. That's really neat.
You know, so that's why they say like these toy shows basically are being constantly like reimagined, and that like there's always some Batman show that's in the works, and there's like always like, you know, some Ninja Turtle show in the works, because they're constantly kind of like updating that for the, you know, the 6-year-olds of tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons something might get rebooted. The other reason is like, you know, sometimes there's an executive who has strong feelings about a property, and he's like, or they're like, you know, like, oh, we want to bring this, you know, we want to give it a second shot, or like, you know, I don't know what the story behind the Powerpuff Girls one was, but I think that was kind of like, they were like, oh, this was, you know, like this was one of our flagship things. Let's bring it back again.
Yeah, but it wasn't the guy who was what's his Samurai Jack and all that. He wasn't involved with it.
Oh, that was so Powerpuff Girls was different. So Powerpuff Girls was Craig McCracken, and Samurai Jack was Gendy. But
didn't he have the same? He was involved with that too, wasn't he?
They were like, so I think Craig McCracken used to work on Dexter's Lab. Like a lot of those shows kind of had the same style because they were, you know, they were all working on each other's shows and stuff.
But I mean, no matter what, I recall that he had nothing. The Powerpuffs had nothing to do with the,
you know, totally like, you know, rebooted without them. But the other thing that might lead to a reboot is they say culture kind of has like a 30-year cycle where like, you know, that's how long it takes for kids who grew up with something to then be old enough to make things. So, you know, the things that, you know, you're like, oh, I love Biker Mice from Mars. Why is there a Biker Mice from Mars? Like, I want to make
and the reboot.
Love Biker Mice from Mars as much as I love Biker Mice from Mars. And so then the 30-year-olds of today reboot that because that's what they like remembered loving from their childhood. And so that seems to be like the different things that lead to a reboot happening. And you know, it can be different levels of, I guess, you know, corporate influence and stuff like that. But, you know, it's like there's definitely a lot of things where people are like, why was this rebooted? Like, that didn't need to happen. And it's like, oh, it's rebooted because that was someone's favorite thing and they want to share it with other people.
Since you've worked on two things that have been, like Ben 10 major aspect is a reboot there versus say Solar Opposites. Which one do you feel less constrained in Solar Opposites because there's no folklore or sort of a well actually keyboard warrior sitting there ready to
it's like definitely give and take. Like, I mean, part of that too is that like Solar Opposites is an adult show and Ben 10 is a kid show, so there's very strict S&P standards on it.
Well, of course,
and then part of it is that, you know, like Solar Opposites is scripted and Ben 10, like, you know, we were writing the script, so it's like, you know, on one hand you have more freedom with Solar because you're allowed to be like, you know, grosser and raunchier and like do things that are disgusting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then on Ben 10, it's like, you know, everybody always has to wear seatbelts and everybody, like, you know, you can't do any, like, you know, we had like an episode where a character fell into like chest deep water. And the S&P guys were like, they have to be wearing like a floaty life vest because they were like, we can't have kids just like jumping in the water if they can't swim. And we're like, well, there's no reason for the character to be wearing a life vest. Like, they don't expect to be thrown in the water. They're just, you know, it happens by accident. And that was, you know, so we had to make it like knee deep water. Like, they could fall into knee deep water. They just couldn't fall into chest deep water. And we're like, isn't that more dangerous to fall into shallow water? But, you know.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Oh my God. I can handle this. It's a puddle that deep, but I have seen it on cartoons so much.
But then, you know, like there was so much of that where it was like, you know, just kind of like following these rules of like non-imitatable behavior. Like, you know, like some of them were very technical on like what was okay and what wasn't. Like, you know, I worked on this episode with our Vin Diesel parody character, like Vin Ethanol. And, you know, I pitched the episode, like I wrote this whole thing basically from scratch. And then, you know, my board partner, Ben, helped, you know, do the episode because he was the other board artist on it. But so we were like, oh, well, you know, Vin's whole thing is that he's like Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious. So he's like the big car guy. And Kevin's thing in the old show was that he was a mechanic and he built cars and loved cars and stuff like that. And so I was like, what if Vin has like taken Kevin under his wing because, you know, he's like, oh, you like cars, that's great. And then Ben's like super jealous because Vin's cool. And they're like, the whole episode is just Ben and Kevin fighting for like Vin's cool dad energy. And so we had
notice me senpai.
Yeah, well, so we're introducing like how Vin and Kevin met each other, and the way we originally wrote it is like Kevin's trying to hotwire his car and he's like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, what are you doing to my car? And Kevin's like, stealing it. And he's like, oh, honesty, like I like that. And that's like instant friendship. But they were like, oh, we can't have him hotwiring a car, like we can't imply that a child is going to drive a car, that's not okay for S&P. So they changed it. I mean, I think it got changed again from this, but like we had a version where, you know, so Kevin's trying to break into the car and Vin comes up and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And Kevin's like, stealing. And that was fine.
See, you could have easily have done it, or even like a bicycle. Like you could have had it. I mean, like I'm just thinking creatively.
Well,
like, well, okay, well,
he's
stealing a bike.
Like the whole point of the episode is that, you know, he's teaching Kevin how to fix cars, and you know.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit more. No, I'm just as creative. My creative brain kind of went.
That's the whole thing we have to do is like S&P will be like, no, we don't like that, and then we have to figure out how to kind of negotiate with them. Sometimes
S&P, you know, is what?
Oh, standards and practices.
Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
And there's, you know, there's like international S&P. There's different, like, you know, there's American S&P. There's like, you know, European S&P.
China. What? China.
Well,
what?
I mean, you know, there are some things like, I guess like on Middle Eastern shows, like, you know, you're not allowed to show characters like consuming pork products, and you're not allowed to have
alcohol.
Like, well, and I mean, I don't know if it was just for the Middle East or if it was also for like some American things, but like you weren't allowed to show characters consuming anything that counted as a drug. So you also couldn't show them drinking coffee. Like that, you know.
Wow, that's
coffee.
Oh,
there's also you can't show characters like over consuming. Like we had an episode where it was like, I think it was supposed to be like Ben ate too much ice cream and he got a tummy ache, and they were like, oh, you can't show him eating like an irresponsible amount of food because then, you know, we're promoting childhood obesity, I guess. Even though, you know, it's supposed to be like, oh, he's in pain because he ate too much food. But I mean, that's definitely the thing you have to remember with young kids. It's like, I know a lot of people kind of like write these off as like, oh, that's a stupid rule, but it's like, you never know what kids are going to like cling to, is, you know.
Well, my father told me when I was a little boy, he said, like we were watching the Bugs Bunny and all that. And I guess growing up in a northern Alberta town, where I came from, is like guns and stuff. And Dad's like, you know, if that happens to you in real life, you're dead. He just said it back like, and
Yeah.
I was like, all right, don't put your face in front of a shotgun. God, right?
No, I mean,
Don't jump off the roof. Superman can fly. You can't.
I mean, I remember seeing a thing they were talking about, like, not even just censorship in like kids cartoons, but they were talking about like for like live action shows and stuff like that, and how downplaying how much different injuries actually hurt you uh is more dangerous than just, you know, showing the consequences. Because they were saying like there are so many people who think that you can get hit hard enough to pass out, and that's like, you know, you'll just wake up and be fine. It's like, if you got hit so hard you went unconscious, like you've got a concussion, you could be like bleeding in your brain, like, you know, it's like there's the whole joke in Archer or whatever where, you know, the character gets like hit on the head and knocked out. They're like, oh, that's like super bad for you. Like,
yeah,
but
no,
yeah, like
you're right. You're right though. It's like oh man. Oh,
well, I was saying, like, you know, just from watching TV, I have no concept of how long it takes someone to actually die of a gunshot wound. Because I was watching like a bunch of like Law and Order, and then I was watching a bunch of like Oz and The Wire and stuff like that. And you'll have some shows where a character gets shot and they're basically fine. Like, you know, it's like, oh, you took a bullet, like whatever, everyone can walk off a bullet. And then you'll have ones where it's like they get shot and they're dead within 3 minutes.
15 minutes apparently is the length of time, as I do staged combat, right? So we're doing fight drills with Todd, who's our one of their fight masters. And he said one day we were like sitting there and he's like, back out like this, be in defense, get ready to fight. And it's like, and he's like, here, I'll show you how long this is. 15 minutes, go. Here's a pool noodle, here's a pool noodle. And we fought. And you see how long it's 15 or 5 or 9. It's like a weird number. Like, I don't quote me on the exact time, but it's like a good chunk of time where a person, if you stab them through the heart, they could still kill you. You know what I mean? Like, just for like, there's a brief moment of time that you don't just stab a guy and he's dead.
Like, I mean, you see it so much in zombie shows. Like, they're like, you have to destroy the brain to kill the zombie. And it's like, okay, like, I get that. And then they'll show someone like ice pick a zombie in the head. And it's like, that wouldn't kill a living human. Like,
no, right? Like, there's a level of damage that one person has to. And like I said, like you hear about that in like war shows where guys like run at the garrison, like taking bullets, hand grenades, like, you know, walking off a bad hangover.
Well, like, you know, I think it was my dad was like, I think this was someone who was in his neighborhood when he was a kid, but it was like, you know, this was before Canada had the gun control laws that it does now. And there was like a kid in his neighborhood who found it like a gun and was just playing with it like a toy, and accidentally ended up shooting the mailman, and he got shot in the head and he survived. And he was like basically the same, except he couldn't read. Like the part of his brain that like recognizes letters didn't work anymore. And so he had to like relearn how to read. And then they were saying like just the fact that like the part of your brain where you store like that part of knowledge, like the fact that it was damaged, but then another part of the brain picked up the slack and figured out how to, like, you know, kind of put those wires back together and relearn how to read. They're saying like that's a testament to neuroplasticity, and that, you know, like there's all these like specialized parts of the brain, but if one part's damaged, another part can like pick up the slack.
We're such an amazing creatures, are we not?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's times like, you know, I passed out on a tile floor once and I almost died. I cracked the back of my head open and I was like, man, like the fact that a human being can die falling the height that a human being stands off the ground.
You're part of the old Cobb crew, crippled biker bastards.
Yeah.
Is the or bitches or whatever the
yeah.
terminology. How many times? I was in.
So I've been in 2 crashes. One of them, the bike was fine and my shoulder was broken, and one of them I was fine, but the bike was totaled. And I mean, it was a $2,000 bike, so it was more like they were like, "Yeah, this is going to cost like $2,500 to fix, so it's not worth it." Yeah, it was. I mean,
we were chatting about that before. You were saying like this part of your hand. Like,
it was.
I got carpal tunnel. You got the other tunnel syndrome.
Yeah, it was the ulnar nerve. I think it like goes through kind of like your elbow. Like I basically got like bonked in there, and so it paralyzed like my whole forearm. And so I just had like that section of like those three fingers that I could still feel, but like these fingers were like, they were like totally just like numb and palsy. Like I had this one time where I was like waking up and I was trying to get out of bed and I couldn't, and I was like, why can't I get out of bed? And I realized that those two fingers had like hooked on the sheets and I couldn't feel that, like, that my arm was being tugged.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was crazy. It was just
you still ride though, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's I've never owned a car in my life. I haven't even driven a car in like 8 years.
I bought one recently just because my hands were giving out, so I had to get to work or get around. But no, I'd rather.
It's also like I can't imagine trying to make it year round on a bike, and
last year I did it. I did it. I rode till February, March before my hands totally just said, nah, we're done. But yeah, no, I've been riding. I rode all year. I rode right up till March. It was good times. It was good times. You just got to like hit the snowstorms at the right time.
Sorry, I realized I hadn't passed on a file to the place where it was supposed to be, but that's taken care of.
That's fine. That's fine. But yeah, it's been about an hour, I'd say. Unless I guess at this point, I normally say to my guests, social media you want to plug? Are there any shows that you're like that you don't have to make me cut off at the very end of our discussion, that you want to like say, hey, get ready for this is coming?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I'm Seal a Squid everywhere, and that's how you pronounce it. There's a lot of, I actually just had someone the other day saying, like, I followed you for 10 years and I just realized how it's supposed to be pronounced. It's not Koala Squid, it's Seal a Squid.
I did it too, Seal a Squid. But
yeah, it's like the fish, like coelacanths. It comes from the Greek word coelum, that means hollow, because they're called, coelacanth means hollow spine. But that's the part of your body that like all your organs are in, like basically like the inside of your torso is called your coelum, because it's the hollow. But so
thank you for the little bit of an educational thing here.
Yeah, so it's Coela Squid. But that's my name basically everywhere.
I'll post it down in the thing.
And we've got, I worked on Lower Decks that's coming out next month, like the second season of it, and I haven't seen. I don't know when.
I'm on the fence about that one. I'm just gonna say I'm a diehard Star Trek fan, but I'm kind of like, is it sort of like, is it worth watching? Like, I'm a diehard. I am very much like, I have a Romulan cruiser up on my bird of prey up there. So
I don't know if, like, how accurate, but like, the story that I'd been told behind the show was that apparently, like, Mike, who's like the showrunner, just loved The Next Generation so much. He was like, he wrote basically like a fanfic, like a speculative, like, if I got to write a season of The Next Generation, this is what would happen in it. And then some of his artist friends were like, this is amazing, we love this so much, we want to like make a zine out of this. And so they kind of like, made a bunch of comics and stuff. And I forget what the zine's called, but like they put out a few volumes of this like Star Trek zine that they sold at kind of like the little festivals around LA and stuff like that. And then I guess, is it CBS that does Star Trek?
Yeah.
I forget who owns what.
CBS.
But yeah, so they were like, oh, you're like a real showrunner and you made this thing, and like so many Star Trek people are excited about it and they love it. Like, you got all these artists who just wanted to join on your cause, like, because they believed in it. So they were like, yeah, we want to have you basically like turn this into a show. I don't know if that's how true that is. That's the story I'd been told by somebody else working on the show. All right,
I'll give it a shot. Just because you're involved with it, I will sit down and watch. And I mean that like coming from a very beautiful, kind place for your work. So
like when you start a new show, a lot of the times they'll have like a style guide that just kind of teaches you like, here's how to draw on the style of the show, here's the kind of shots we set up, here's how we do, like, like every show has kind of a different approach to framing, or like how they do, like how dynamic you can be and stuff like that. And one of the things in the style guide, like, right up the front of it for Lower Decks was like, this show is not making fun of Star Trek. This show loves Star Trek. Like this is a love letter to Star Trek. So it's, it's not like a cynical kind of like, like, oh, let's dunk on it. It's like, this is being made by people who like love the thing they're making.
All right. You talked me into it. All right. Kelly, it's again been such a pleasure to see you. and to jump onto the Bulldog experience. It was a really nice time. Thank you again, and again, I'll put all of your information in the description. So
thank you so much.
Much love to you. Skål.
Yeah, you as well. I'm glad to see your recovery. Yeah.
Cheers. And now down. That was good. It's always good. I love talking to people. I'm really glad I'm doing this. Being able to share with you all who come and check out my podcast the interesting and wonderful, unique people that I know in my life. So, thank you, Kelly, for giving me such a wonderful interview, and wish you all the best in your upcoming adventures, upcoming projects. Looking forward to viewing them. Whatever, dealer's choice. Info will be down in the comments. Or not comments, you know what it is. Down there. Why explain stuff, right? Why am I even bothering? Like, share, and subscribe. If you like my stuff, cool. Thanks for coming. If you don't, there's millions more wonderful, weird, entertaining things out in the vastness of this universe, so I will not feel offended if you don't come back. But I feel like I bring a little stuff, a little interesting things into the universe. So if you do like it, please join me next week. I think I'm stopping at this point saying who I'm going to be interviewing. I'll just announce it on the day. I find that it's, kind of hard and a little bit nerve-wracking if, say, somebody cancels, to find last minute replacements, and that way I don't feel the pressure or annoyance of coming up to people. Hey, can we do that in an interview you promised to do? Hi. Not naming names, not naming anything. It just I've realized that it gets, people's schedules are wacky, and if I, something comes up, I don't want to be like, next week Joe Biden's going to be on the program, and then next week Joe Biden's not going to be on the program, and then I have to look like an asshole saying that it's not my fault Joe Biden canceled. Joe Biden's a busy man. He promised me that he was going to be on this program. I didn't assume that, Russia. Anyway, so yeah, sponsorship, still looking. Still, stuff's kind of working, I suppose. But like I said, I'm looking for sponsors. I've made a Patreon. There should be a link in the on my YouTube page for that. I'll double check that, make sure that that's set up. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee or keep my bowl and pipe full, more's the better. I pay rent here. Knock it off. Anyway. So, on that note, I wish you all the best. Thank you again for coming by. Enjoying the show. So, on that note, skål. Thank you for enjoying the experience.